Peter draws his sword. Somebody read 18:4-11.
Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he." Jesus said, and Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." "I told you that I am he," Jesus answered. "If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?"
Okay. Why did you bring 200 soldiers? I mean,
They're afraid.
huh?
They're afraid.
They're afraid, number one. Anybody else?
To look strong.
Say what?
To look strong.
To appear strong. Okay.
To look powerful.
They knew what he could do. They'd seen him do miracles and.
Okay, they've seen him do miracles. Had he ever done any miracles that were offensive or intimidating?
No, not unless they're in the temple and he started throwing tables.
Yeah, there it is, that one. There is that one.
They knew they were wrong.
I'm sorry.
They knew they were wrong. They knew they were wrong.
They knew they were wrong. That's a good one. All the other ones are good and probably played in. But they were trying to set the stage for the Romans that would portray him as a terrorist. We call it a terrorist today. Back then, the word would have been rebellious. He was leading a rebellion. They wanted it to look like he was leading a rebellion. And we see that in Luke 22:52-53. Then Jesus said to the high priest, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns." Everything about what they did was false. When they put him on trial, we won't be studying that because we're talking about Peter, but when they put him on trial, they couldn't find two people who could testify in a like manner to convict him. Because back then, there had to be two or more witnesses against you, or you couldn't be convicted. They couldn't, out of all those thousands of people that showed up for his trial, they couldn't find two people who could say the same thing. Because they were making it up as they went along. And if you go back and look at their confrontations along the way, it said, and they sought to trick him, and they thought that they sought to trick him, and they sought to trick him. Their whole thing about this was to make him look rebellious so the Romans would react and take the monkey off their back. They wanted the Romans to crucify him, and they wanted the Romans to be done with him. Did that work? No? When they crucified him?
Yeah,
Did the Romans do it?
I guess, yeah.
You're
Pilate didn't
right.
want to.
You're right. Stick to your guns. What did Pilate say? He looked at the high priest and said, "Take him and do what ye will with him."
Yeah.
The Romans didn't do it. If the Romans had sacrificed the lamb would not have been worthy and would not have atoned for the sins of the world. It had to be done by the high priest. And that was the only time in Roman history found anywhere when a Roman magistrate turned the power of life and death over to a citizen of the country. It was reserved only for Roman authority. The power of life and death could only be levied by a Roman. Okay. So it was just part of the farce. Why did they fall backwards?
Right.
It's interesting how he answered. He said, I am. Where have you ever heard that before?
God, or Moses.
Moses. Yeah, exactly. God said, I am the I am. It's an interesting study on God's names. There are myself in the hole here. It's either 7 or 12. I think it's 7. There are 7 names for Jehovah. Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Shalom. If it's 12, I'll let you know next week, but I think there's 7. And each one of them tells you an aspect of God. But the word Jehovah, and in the Jewish Yahweh, is their version of it. Because the name that God gave Moses cannot be pronounced by the human tongue. The way the vowels and the consonants are put together, it's like FP, X. How do you say FPX? Now, that's not what it is, but it's an example of how it is. Because human beings are not worthy to say the true name of God. And so when God gave Moses his name, the I am, it was in a verbal form that cannot be pronounced by the human tongue. We cannot put those syllables together to make any kind of a sound. Because one of them is with your mouth open and the next one is with your mouth closed, and then open and close, and you just can't do it. Jesus said that word because he's God. He spoke the true name of God, which no man had ever spoken up to this point. And when he said it, the power of it knocked them backwards. And they fell backwards over their back. So they get up, and then Jesus said, who is it you want? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. And then in the English it says, I told you that I am he. But in the Hebrew, or in the Greek, it says, he said it in a different form the second time. He said, I told you I'm that me. In the first one he said, I am. Boom. The force of the word threw them backwards. The second time he said, that's who I said I was. Because he didn't want to be labored. He needed to get on with it. Okay? So in the English, you don't see the intricacies of that. But in the Greek, it's very clear. So they fell backwards because the true name of God had been spoken, and the force and the power of saying that name threw 200 soldiers to their backs. It says something about the power of the Word of God. And the power of God's name, it very it indicates how powerful it is. Why would one man attack 200?
Because
I mean, is there any sense to that at all?
He didn't.
It's a suicide mission.
I was gonna say, at the time, he wasn't doing, he was not in his right mind, so to speak. I mean, he wanted to prove, Jesus had just told him that, he was going to deny him 3 times and everything else. So he probably had that still stuck in his mind and wanted to prove that, he wasn't going to deny him.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Peter has just had a horrible day. He spent the whole day, Jesus told him, you're the stone, the church is going to be built on your foundation. And then he tells him to go and make preparations and to go to the grocery store and to get the fish and to get the wine and to get everything set up, to set the tables. So the head of the church is now running around doing what a slave's supposed to do. Okay? Then Jesus washes his feet. And that's a big confrontation for him and very humiliating for him. And then he argues with Jesus at the table and says, no, I will not do it. I'm not going to do that. I am willing to die for you. And Jesus says, before this night's over, you will deny me 3 times. Then he goes to the garden, and what happens in the garden 3 times?
Falls asleep.
Falls asleep and can't watch with Jesus 3 times. And Jesus comes back and chastises him. You notice, if you go back and read it again, he didn't chastise James and John. He chastised Peter. He said, Peter, can't you watch with me for 1 hour? Then he comes back a second time. He says, are you sleeping again? Then he comes down the 3rd time and says, okay, get up. Enough. Let's get on with it. Okay? So Peter has just been smacked down 3 times. And now he just desperately says, I gotta show them that I'm serious. I gotta show them that I'm for real. And he does one of the dumbest things that may be recorded in Scripture. I mean, who does he think he is? Samson with the jawbone of an ass?
Well, he also just witnessed Jesus say, I am he, and watch them all fall down. So he's probably feeling empowered now. He's got Jesus on his
That might have
side.
encouraged him, you're right. I hadn't thought about that, but that might have said, hey, the power's here, let's go for it. Well, if you go back and read about the sword thing earlier, they only had 2 swords among them. Because when we get to Luke 22, 36 and 37, Jesus told them to go buy a sword. And if you read the next couple verses, they said, we have 2, and Jesus says, that's enough, but we'll deal with that. Okay. How does Luke's account differ about the ear? It's a rhetorical question. You can't possibly know unless you know the Greek. So I'll just tell you. Okay? In the Greek, now, Luke was a doctor. So he was really interested in the human side of everything, and he was very good at anatomy. He was a very good doctor. And if you look at Matthew and Mark, it says he cut off the ear. If you look at John, it says he cut off the ear. And you would assume, how would you assume that the sword blade would have gone if he cut off the ear? Vertical. Okay? He cut off the ear. So what happened? In Luke it says he cut off the small ear. He cut off the earlobe. The big ear is the part that is attached to the head. The small ear is the part that hangs below the attachment, right? Starts right there, and it's the earlobe down here. So if he cut off the earlobe, how was the sword blade?
You had to go up.
Horizontal. It had to come in like that to cut off the ear, not cut off the rest of it. If you cut off the whole ear, it was a vertical stroke. If you cut off the small ear, it's horizontal. So if it's horizontal,
He had to turn
He
his
was trying to
face.
chop his head off.
he's trying to cut the guy's head off or cut his throat. Now, he's not a soldier, and he's not good with swords, and he missed. Thankfully, he missed. But his intent was to show that he was dead serious. When he came around with that sword, he was going for the guy's head. He was going for the guy's throat. Okay? He missed and cut off it. And Jesus healed the high priest's servant. But look at the chastisement. Said, Peter, put away your sword. You're a moron. There's 200 soldiers here, and they're going to kill you if you keep acting like an idiot. Is that what he said?
In a few less words, but yes.
He said, Peter, put away your sword. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me? This has to happen. It needs to happen. It's going to happen. Stop. Just stop. His true intention was to do bodily harm to the priest's servant and to wade in to the 200 soldiers. Not very smart, not thinking, but he had lost the message that Jesus had told them at the Last Supper. Don't he?
He called him Peter. He called him Peter through that. Instead of Simon, he called him Peter.
Yeah, he called him Peter.
So he's not, so usually when he did something bad, he would call him Simon. So why is he calling him Peter?
But why do you think he did that? Why do you think he called him Peter and not Simon? I mean, this is pretty dumb, right? You'd have thought he'd said, Simon, what's the matter with you? And he says, Peter, put away your sword.
To comfort him?
To comfort him and to acknowledge the fact that this was genuine. Peter actually thought he was doing the right thing. And even though he was doing the wrong thing, God didn't chastise him for it. He didn't say Simon. Because he knew his heart was pure. And he knew that Peter was trying to make up for a miserable day. And he had compassion on him. It says something about Jesus and the way he deals with his children. A lot of times we're clear off the road, headed the wrong direction, like Paul was. But we honestly think we're doing the right thing. You ever been there? Do you believe the same things today that you believed 20 years ago, or has it evolved? I hate to use the word evolve, but has it corrected itself, or have you become deeper in some aspects of it? Okay. So 30 years ago, you didn't have the whole truth, or you had the wrong perspective of the truth. And God loved you, and God tolerated you, and slowly and surely he straightened, he renewed your mind. He helped you to understand that you were being too liberal, or you were being too legalistic, and that your relationship with him was much simpler and much more accommodating, that you didn't have to fear him. Remember that? Remember what we said the other day? If you don't have to fear God, you don't have to fear anything. Well, we all kind of start out fearing God, don't we? We were sinners saved by grace, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit comes along and said, you're a mess and you're going to hell. And most of us get turned around by considering the consequences and fearing them. And then we slowly learn that that God is an Abba Father. He is our daddy. He's our papa. He loves us, and he does not want us to fear him. He wants us to respect him. but he doesn't want us to fear him. He wants us to rest in his grace. He wants us to know that he loves us. He wants us to be able to sleep at night and not have to worry about it. Okay, we're going to stop there and pick it up next week or something else we need to talk about.